Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about The Strain Season 1 episode Creatures of the Night. I've actually never talked about this show, period, on my channel, but I wanted to for the longest time. And now I finally get to, and I'm going to be doing a whole lot more in the future. The Strain was one of the most interesting vampire series I had ever seen. It is very good, except for the last season. But it is very good. It's unique. It's created, but I'm gonna butcher his name. Um, Something Del Toro. Jeez, I almost had his name. Gario de Terra, blah, 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 blah. It's something. The dude who directed Blade 2, Gario del Toro, something like that. He created a book, a trilogy called The Strain. He got to adapt it for his own TV show on FX. Now it's on Hulu. It had 3 books, but it lasted for 4 seasons. Like I said before, the first 3 seasons are great. That 4th one is not. And what's so unique about these vampires is that it's okay. They're controlled by somebody known as the Master. He has the ability to see through the vampire's eyes and hear them. When these vampires turn to vampires, they're just savage beasts with no intelligence, and he can control them. But then he can also give back some humanity to someone if he wants to, but that's very rare. Another interesting thing about this is like the way they look. When they look like the vampire from Blade 2, except their mouths don't peel back open, but they have the long tongue. And the thing about these vampires, these are the toughest vampires I've ever seen. They could either bite you or they can get you from like 3 feet away with their long tongue. The tongue, the moment it hits you, bam, you're infected. And the thing that's so gross is that it's worms crawling around in your body. That's the parasite that the vampires give off. And they multiply. And if you say you turn into one, if you go splat, there's like all this white ooze everywhere and worms. And like, say you shoot a vampire from a far away distance, right? You shoot him in the head, kill it with silver. You have to use silver for these or sunlight. You shoot it, say its head goes splat and the blood, gutsy stuff goes everywhere. If it goes splat and it falls on you, the worms are in that juice and they can infect you. So these things are super hard to kill. And that happens too. Sometimes they go splat and they affect other people. So yeah. But if you kill the master, all the vampires will either like die and stuff. So it's that kind of old school stuff. So anyway, this episode we see it starts with the last one left off, and it's Professor Abraham, and he's trying to kill this one like first in command of the Master, who actually has his intelligence and stuff. And God, what is his name? It's really hard. Let's see. His name is Ickhurst, and Professor Abraham hates him so much because he murdered, like, I think, like his wife and stuff back in the Holocaust days. Because Ickhurst used to be like a Nazi. Now Professor Abraham, he is able to stay alive because he eats the worms that come from like the vampires, and it keeps him immortal. He has spent his entire life trying to kill these things. And he has a really cool sword. It's made of silver and it has a snake head that's coral as the handle. So he's talking to Dr. Goodweather and Dr. Nora Martinez and their friend, Jim Kent. So the doctor, he's the head of the CDC. He's been framed by the vampires, so he's constantly on the run. And he's trying to stop this. He doesn't believe in vampires. He thinks this is just a parasitic infection. Even though he sees them turn to monsters, he's still trying to believe this is all science and not like supernatural. This is what caused the conflict between him and the professor. So, like, they're trying to think of a way that they can kill these vampires, and they know sunlight works. Now, before this, Jim Kent has betrayed them. He worked for the vampires to find a cure for his wife, but they kind of like forgive him a little bit. And he's friends with like the doctor and stuff. So anyway, they're trying to figure out a way to stop these vampires, and they know they need UV lights to make their own sunlight. So they break into like a place that has those for medical supplies. And then as they're there, there's a man and he pulls a gun on them and he's acting like he's security. He's all like, "Are y'all looters?" And they're like, "No." And they're all like, "Who are you?" He's like, "Well, I'm a looter." But he's an exterminator. And he's stealing a bunch of UV lights and they want them. He won't give them to him. But then they convince, he has 12, but he gives them half because Dr. Martinez, being the female and everything, she persuades him and stuff. So they need to like charge them up and everything like that. And they go into like a gas station. And it's there we meet Dutch. Dutch is like a computer hacker. And she's there with her girlfriend, Nikki. And so Nikki is like, "What did you do?" Because the ATMs won't work. Some of the machines won't work. And she says these people pay her lots of money to shut off all the phone service and like the internet and like ATM machines and stuff like that. See, it was the vampires that did it because the vampires have humans working for them that are rich. And so they the ones who pay her off, but she doesn't know it. Next thing you know, vampires start swarming outside the gas station. And so like they're completely like trapped and they don't know what they're gonna do. This is Dutch's first time seeing a vampire. The clerk inside is the first time seeing it. And so like Nikki, she's just like, screw it. She runs outside, but they don't go after her for some reason. And they don't understand why. And so like they think it's because they don't want her, they want them. And because they're the ones trying to stop the vampires. So then the bread guy who delivers bread, he's all like, "My bread truck's outside. We can make it since they're not after us." And so he tells Dutch that. They go outside, but then he gets attacked by 3 of them. They just like neck him and everything. And so they have to save Dutch. They do it because they charged up some of the UV lights, so some of those are working. Also, the professor, he has a nail gun made out of silver, like nails and everything. Now, regular gunfire and stuff will work, but it would just like wound them for a little bit. But silver is the only thing that kills them. And so the guy who's like the looter, his name is like Vasily Fit. And so he takes a crowbar and he's just like going at them. This impresses the professor. That and his quick knowledge of finding out what kills these vampires and stuff like that. So the professor wants him to join their team. As they're inside, they're trying to figure out a way to leave, but they can't. More and more vampires are coming. The professor tells them they won't make it by like morning. They'll die within the hour. While they was outside saving like the bread dude and the girl, Jim gets like nicked by like the tongue of a vampire and leaves a cut. So he goes to clean it. And so as they're trying to figure out a way to get out, they go and down like into like the garage area. There are 2 cars, but one's missing the engine and one's missing the wheels. Why don't they just swap it? Then the professor goes outside because he sees that the vampires are trying to cut off the power to the place. So he tries to stop them, but by interfering, he ends up cutting the power off himself by mistake. So now they're out of power. And they can't charge the UV lights and stuff. So they only have whatever charge they have. And so like they notice when talking to Jim, he has a worm crawling on his skin in the inside. So they're all like, they're worried. So They perform surgery. They get like a box cutter and they cut open his cheek, and they're like just looking for like the worm with some tweezers, and they pull the worm out and they hit it with a UV light. And so they stitch him up, and they're still getting cornered. More and more vampires are coming. So then they're all like, well, we have to like get out of here, and because if we don't, we're gonna die in this place. So Vastly, he comes up with the idea of using the gasoline from the station. So he dumps out all the beer bottles, and he pours like alcohol in them, and he makes one of those little cocktail things that like explode when you throw them, and they burst into flames. Before they can do all this, as they're talking to Jim, they realize they see another worm. So they use the UV light to like illuminate his skin. There are worms all in his back, in the inside. There's no way to treat him. But um, Dr. Goodweather, he's all like, look, man, we can take you to the hospital, give you some antibiotics. We can give you chemo and everything. Like, there's all kind of medical science. We can do this thing because this is nothing but science. And so he's all like, look, man, I don't want to turn into a vampire. I'd rather die. And the professor tells him that he has to die now because if he don't, the master can see through his eyes and hear everything that's going on. And so they're debating on whether to kill him or not. And then, so the professor, he's going to do it with his sword. But the doctor stops him. As soon as that happens, Vastly takes out his gun and uploads round after round of bullets into Jim. This pisses off both the doctors. They say he had no right. It was their best friend. And Vastly's like, look, man, it's him or us. And the dude asked to die. And the professor's all like, we can't argue about this now. We have to leave because they're on the rooftop now. They're finna bust through. As soon as they make it outside, they bust through the roof. The clerk doesn't want to leave, so no telling what happened to him, but he's dead. They make their ways outside. They're shooting off bullets. They got the UV lights. They're trying to get into like the bread truck, and so they need gasoline for more fire and stuff to keep the vampires away. So they have to use like an ATM card to like use the thing. And this is when the hilarious stuff starts to happen because Vastly doesn't have a debit card, so he uses Nora's, and then he's all like, what's the password? And he's all like, I'm waiting for this thing to authorize and stuff. So then they light the place up, and then they head into the bread truck as they're like fighting the vampires left and right. Then they finally get inside the truck, and then they just like drive off. It ends. This is like my favorite episode in the entire series. I started in season 3, and then when it was on FX and stuff, and then I worked my way backwards. And then I just remember this has always been my favorite episode, other than the premiere of the 3rd season. And it's just like, because it was so creepy. Like, this is how I love how they do monster stuff. They got a bunch of monsters. They're in a closed off place. It's a small cast. Everybody's scared. They try to figure out what's going on. And it's just so unique and cool and awesome this show is. Like, these are a different breed of vampires, and they're awesome. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.